Hi guys, in today's tutorial we are going to see how to create charts from JSON files using the Chart.js library and JavaScript. Also we're going to see how to change the type of a chart with a simple click of a button. So let's see how we do this. And I have to say it's easier than you think. So let's jump to my editor and see the files that we need. The file that we see is the index.html file. It has a link to my style sheet and a script tag that points to my JavaScript file, which JavaScript file is empty. I have a styles.css file, which is structuring our layout, and we have a data.json file that contains the data we'll be displaying in our charts. Let me explain what we see here. In our JSON file, we have an array of objects. Every object has a month property and an income property. We are going to fetch the values of those properties to create our chart in the JavaScript file. That's all the files that we need. So let's jump to the index file and start coding. Okay, now every time we deal with third-party APIs, we start from their documentation. So let's go to the Chart.js website and click on the Get Started button. We are going to use the latest version, which is 4.4.1. I'm going to click again on the Get Started link, and nice. Here we have an example of the basic HTML and JavaScript code needed to render a chart. I will copy first the script tag and the canvas element, and I will paste them in my index file. Nice. The script tag will give us access to the Chart.js library, and the canvas element is necessary for Chart.js to render the charts. The canvas element has an ID of my chart. We are going to target the canvas ID from the JavaScript file to gain access to the canvas element. Now let's give a class of chart to the div element that holds the canvas, so it will match the CSS class that I have in the CSS file. Okay, now I will go back to Chart.js documentation and I will copy the JavaScript code and I will place it in the JavaScript file. Nice. Okay, now let's check if this basic example works. I'm going to refresh the index file, which I have already opened in a new tab, and nice, here is our chart. Now we have the foundation to build upon. But before we proceed, let me arrange the elements in the screen and explain a few key points in the JavaScript code. In the first line, we see that we are targeting the canvas element and storing it in a variable named ctx. Next, we create a new chart object. The chart object takes in two parameters. The first parameter is the variable that holds the canvas, and the second parameter is an object. This object has a property named type. The type property specifies what type of chart will be displayed. If I change the bar value to line and refresh the browser, we will see a line chart. If I say Doughnut, it will change to a pie chart. Let's change the value back to bar. Next, we have a data property which also holds an object. Here are the important stuff. The labels property holds an array of the values we see on the x-axis. And the data property holds also an array of each data point value. We see those values when we hover over a data point. And last, in the y-axis, there's a range of numbers starting at 0 and ends a little bit higher than the biggest data point value. The next thing has to do with the layout. We see that the chart is responsive, but I don't want it to shrink. I want the chart maintain its height. So in the options object, I will set a property named maintain aspect ratio to false. Now the chart will maintain its height when displayed in mobile screens. I like it better this way. Okay, now it's time to focus on our task, and that is fetching the data from the JSON file and display them in our chart. I will create a function named createChart, and I will place the chart object inside the function. The function will have two parameters. I will name the first parameter data, which will hold the data from the JSON file, and the second parameter to type. The second parameter will specify the chart's type. So I will change the string bar to the type variable. Next, I'm going to use the fetch method to get the data from the JSON file. As an argument, I will pass in the method the path to the JSON file. Next, I will use a then method to catch the server's response. The then method takes as an argument a function, which function takes also an argument that I will name response for clarity. Inside the function, I will check if the server's response is successful by checking the response.OK property. And if it is equal to true, we use the response.json method because we are expecting JSON data. But we cannot use the data yet. We have to write another .then method to parse the data from the response. Now we have access to the JSON data. So I will call the createChart function and I will pass in the JSON data and I will initiate our chart type to bar. If we refresh the browser window, nothing is going to change because we need also to replace the labels array and the data array with the data from the JSON file. The thing that I want is to display the months as labels and the income as data points. To do this, I need to know the structure of the data that the server returns. So I will log to the console the data variable to see what it holds. Let's do a reload on our page. And we see that the data variable holds an array of objects. Now I know what I have to do. Okay, let's do the labels first. I will remove the hard-coded array. I will use the data variable and I will say .map. The map method will return an array that holds each month. Now I will do the same thing with the income. Okay, let's refresh the browser window to see if our code works. And yes, it works fine. We see the months as labels and the income values when we hover over the data points. Nice, we fetched the data from the JSON file and displayed them in our chart. Now let's see how to change the chart's type dynamically like we saw in the demo. So let's go to the index file and add some buttons above the canvas. Now all the buttons will be placed inside a div element with a class of chart types. The first button will display the bar chart. I will assign an on-click event listener to the button and every time we click on it, the setChartType function will run. The function takes as an argument the type of the chart that we want to display. Next, I will create the button that will change the chart type to line. Next is the Doughnut button, the polar area, and the radar button. Now let's see our buttons on the page. Nice. Now we jump in the JavaScript file and make those buttons active. Let's write our function above the createChart function. Now, in order to change the type of a chart, we have to destroy the current chart object and create a new one with a new type. And we have to do this inside the function. But the problem is that I don't have access to the chart object because it is created inside another function. But don't worry, the solution is simple. I will create a global variable named myChart. Then I will go inside the createChart function and I will make the chart object equal to the myChart variable. Now I can go inside the setChartType function and say myChart.destroy because now I have access to the chart object. Nice. Okay, the next step is to create a new object with a new chart type assigned. But I have here the same problem. I don't have access to the data from the JSON file. So let's fix this one too. I'm going to create a variable named JSON data inside the last then method and I will set it equal to the data from the JSON file. Next, I will make the JSON data variable global. And now I can pass in the createChart function, the JSON data and the new chart type. And that's it. Let's see if it works. And it works. Nice. And that is all for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked the video. Subscribe if you like. See you in the next one.